And welcome to another edition of the National Hockey Now podcast, our free agent frenzy special here. I'll be too busy tomorrow to have one, just trying to track down signings and whatnot for my Boston Bruins beat for Boston Hockey Now. But we're going to talk a little free agency, the trade market, look back on the draft, and on to join me now. We're going to get right into it. My good friend and longtime NHL analyst and two-time Stanley Cup champion, Pierre McGuire, joining me right now. Pierre, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, Jimmy. How are you?
I'm great. So you were saying as we were talking off air there, you're heading into Montreal, my second home?
I'm actually heading 120 miles north of there to where I actually grew up, Mont-Tremblant, Quebec. So on my way there now. It's amazing, though, Jimmy, when you look at it, from all the forest fires, wow, the skies just, I've never seen it like this up here. I've lived here since I was 6 years old.
Wow.
I'm 62 now.
Jeez, we got a little of it, as you know. You're based in Boston now.
Yeah.
I think like 10 days ago was kind of affecting us here. But yeah, I've heard it's been tough up there, and especially you got to think when it's getting hot and humid, right? It's even worse.
Yeah, very well said by you. Agreed.
Yeah. So, Pierre, let's get right into it. We'll look back at the draft quickly, and then we'll get into free agency. Just your thoughts on the draft. Was there anything that kind of wowed you or took you by surprise, or did it go pretty much as planned in your head?
No, there were some surprises early on. I like Leo Carlsson. I saw him a lot when I was working as a senior vice president in Ottawa when he played for Orbro. He's a really smart player. He's a good 200-foot player, a guy that can really make a difference in a game. But he doesn't have the same offensive upside, in my opinion, that Adam Fantilli has. So with him Carlsson going second overall to Anaheim, and then Fantilli right afterwards going to Columbus, I was really impressed by that for Columbus. I got to tell you, you think about Zach Werenski and Nick Blankenberg, and obviously Kent Johnson, and now you had Adam Fantilli. I know in Columbus they love to hate the University of Michigan, but I think they'll be really happy with the Michigan hockey program.
Yeah, he'll get a pass.
Good players.
Yeah, he'll get a pass. They won't look at him as a Wolverine. You know, I heard you talking with our good friend Mitch Melnick, as you do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you were talking about this too. And a great point you made there. It made me think about it, and you're absolutely 100% correct, is that they've really never had a bona fide number one center in Columbus, have they?
They really haven't. I mean, people can talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois, but when he was there, he was a kid, and he really didn't have game-breaking ability because he didn't have the physical maturity yet. Even though he was big, he wasn't strong. Adam Fantilli is big. He's strong. He's fast. I'm not saying he's Jack Eichel because I don't think that's fair to him. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of similarities in terms of athletic characteristic between Eichel and Fantilli. Very, very similar athletic characteristics.
And looking at the big picture there, while we're on Columbus, Pierre, I mean, I don't think enough people are talking about it right now. Yamo Kekalainen has had one heck of an off season so far, huh?
He has so far, and it's going to be interesting to see how Mike Babcock interacts with these young players because he got a wealth of talent to work with. And sometimes, not all, and Mike's a very good friend of mine, I'll preface that in advance, but sometimes Mike can stifle young talent. If Mike has grown since he got released by Toronto and doesn't stifle those guys, the young players in particular, they have a chance to be very good because Mike is a very, very competent coach.
Is that something I know you're close with him, and I don't know if you're at liberty to say, but is that something that Mike took to heart in his time off, was to, I don't know if the word would be adapt, but just kind of, well, I guess it is adapt, to adapt to the new wave of players?
I think so, James, and I think you really said that well. You know, the biggest thing with Mike is he's highly cerebral. He went to McGill University in Canada, and that is like their version of an Ivy League institution. And Mike was a real good player there. He was a real good student there, and Mike has always been a cerebral person. So I have to think, with all the downtime that he's had since the Toronto release, that he's done a lot of looking in the mirror. What do I do right? What do I do wrong? What do I need to fix? And I wouldn't be surprised if he's fixed a lot of things that he thought he wasn't doing right.
Well, I hope he does. I hope it works out for him. Now, Pierre, let's look at, there were some big deals heading into that draft, but then it seemed to freeze up at the draft itself in terms of player for player. We saw some salary cap dumps again, but in terms of player for player hockey trades, what do you think was the reason for that? And do you think that it will open up now in the next 24 to 48 hours with free agency kicking off?
Well, one of the hard things is this. First of all, this is not a very deep free agent class, so I think that's a bit of an issue. I know that Blake Wheeler now is an unrestricted free agent. I know that Matt Duchene is an unrestricted free agent because they've been bought out, and come tomorrow they'll be available for the market. But this is not a very good free agent class, and so I do think teams that want to strengthen themselves will try to make deals. It'll be very, very interesting to see how it plays out, Jimmy. I would just say this. This was not as deep a draft as some of the prognosticators were telling you. The first 10 picks were elite. And then after that, you saw it was kind of like shifting sand. One group may have had a player rated in the top 10. Another had that same player rated between 20 and 30. Yeah. So that's a major fluctuation in evaluation. And so as we got past the first and even parts of the second round, it was not a particularly deep draft. So I think you're going to see some people, not a lot, but some teams that think they're close, make some big trades going into free agency because it's, again, the free agency class is not very deep.
Now, Pierre, we hear it every year around this time, and it never seems to really materialize. But with the cap being where it is, I was looking at it right now, and I only see maybe a handful of teams that have real cap flexibility. Everyone else is really up against it and hamstrung by that cap. Do you think we actually see some offer sheets this offseason?
No, I'd be surprised on the offer sheet. But we might. I mean, you never say never. But I was sitting with Joe Sakic the other day, and he got an offer from the New York Rangers, and the reason why he got an offer from the New York Rangers because the Rangers ownership didn't think Colorado had the money at that time to match the signing bonus. But what the people in New York didn't know, the people that owned Colorado had a new movie they just put out called Air Force One that provided them a ton of cash that they were able to match the offer. And that's how Joe Sakic stayed with the Colorado Avalanche. Wow. I remember back to when Shea Weber was offered an unbelievable offer sheet by the Philadelphia Flyers. I think it was a $25 million signing bonus, thinking that Nashville couldn't come up with the money, but they found a way. I think the offer sheet business is pretty tough. It's pretty darn tough.
It looks that way. Pierre, well, let's go right to where the city you're headed to, right? Or you drove past and you're headed north of there now, Montreal. And I don't know how much you've been traveling today. I don't know how aware you are of it. Just the treatment that Reinbacher has been getting from a really sad portion, I'll put it, of Montreal Canadiens fans. Look, I live there. I know that city's passion for the game. I think they're the best fan base in the world. But every fan base has their bad apples, and too many of them are coming out right now to the point where, Pierre, I'm seeing stories that this poor kid is getting threatened in his DMs on Instagram. What's your take on that? And just fans taking it too far and really not putting things in perspective.
Well, it's very sad. I knew about this when I was skating in young coach on Fridays. And, I 5:30 this morning to me. No player chooses where they're going to play. The teams, that's why there's a draft. And he got drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. He didn't ask the Canadiens to draft him. The Canadiens drafted him because that's what they felt organizationally was the best thing for them. I know the fans in Montreal like players like Mishkov, fancy offensive players, and that's great. And you know what? I always felt Montreal was going to take him. Jimmy, you heard me on Mitch Melnick's show. I said that a million times. I thought that.
Did we lose him?
Possibly.
Uh-oh. We'll give it some hope.
Yeah. Send in a prayer.
It's all that smog up in Montreal right now. He did say that, though.
Yeah.
He was convinced they were going with Mishkov there. I would have taken Leonard, to be honest. I don't know how much you know about it if I was them.
Oh, he rejoined.
Pierre, you there?
Jimmy.
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
We should be good. Good. We should be good now. You want it to start over? And you can splice it in.
Yeah, sure. So we were just talking about, the negative reaction to David Reinbacher and the fans basically blaming the player instead of the team. And, we seem to both be in agreement that it's not the player's fault. He just got picked there. He can't control that.
No, the player can't control it at all, Jimmy. And, the biggest thing to me is I grew up in Montreal, and I know the passion of the fan base. And I think most people that are Bruins fans understand the passion of the fan base in Montreal, just like they understand the passion of the Bruins fan base. That being said, I don't know how people would say that this isn't the right player for them. Mishkov won't be in Montreal if he were drafted by them for 3 years. How do you know that, this player doesn't come in and do a real good job defensively and handles a small ice play and does a real good job? I think about Lane Hudson. I think about Caden Gooley. And I think about this player, and I'm like, you know what? They got a chance to be real good on defense. And if you use the Vegas model is you got to have big defensemen that are mobile and can move the puck. And then you got a chance to win. So I feel badly for the young man and his family. I don't think any player deserves that. I don't think any coaching staff deserves that kind of abuse. And I don't think any management team deserves that kind of abuse.
No, and it's gotten to the point where, Arpon Basu, I don't know if you heard, was reporting that they might even contemplate sending him back to Austria for a season so he doesn't have to put up with this as he's playing maybe over here in Laval or in juniors. So we'll see what happens. I hope that's not the case. But Pierre, before we let you go, one thing I've been following is the trade status of Noah Hannafin in Calgary. I know there's some teams that are interested. I've heard the Florida Panthers, of course. Don Sweeney's had his eye on him for a while. What do you think his cost is on the trade market right now?
It's high, and I'll tell you why it's high. You look at what Boston paid for Hampus Lindholm last year. That would probably be a comparable. The difference is Hannafin still got contract time. Hampus was going to be an unrestricted free agent if the Bruins didn't sign him, so they took advantage of that. Noah's a really good player. The thing about Florida, you got to remember Paul Fenton is there, based in Massachusetts. Saw him play a ton when he played at your alma mater at St. Sebastian's. Saw him play at Boston College. I've known Noah a long time. I watched him play. He's a very good player, big body who can really skate and log minutes. So his value around the league would be very high, very high.
And you think when Craig is looking out there in the market, is he looking strictly for future, or is he looking for body as well?
I think you got to have at least an established NHL player going into Calgary, because there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on their group. Craig got the job there, and he's been working there a long time, so his fingerprints are on part of it too. But if you're going to replace a general manager like they did in Treliving, and you're going to bring in a guy that was his assistant and he can't get the team to the next level, that's a bit of a problem. So I think if you move a player like Noah Hannafin that's playing over 20 minutes a game for you and you don't get some kind of NHL body compensation back, that's a bit of a problem.
All right. Well, Pierre, before I let you go, my producer here, Blake Thorne, has a little story for you. He's got a little connection to you. Blake, you want to tell him?
Yeah, not a question, just a little small world statement. So your days assistant coaching at Hobart College, you recruited one of my dad's good buddies from Hingham, Mass. Does that ring a bell?
Yep. Was his name Peter Thompson?
Yes, it was. He wanted me to say hello to you.
Well, you see, one of the things that I loved about being a college coach in particular, the relationships that you could build with the players that you recruited and their families. And eventually in my life, when I was actually coaching in Pittsburgh, I lived in Hingham. And back in the day, I would take the ferry from Hingham right to the airport. It didn't stop at Rose Wharf. It went right to the airport. And back then, U.S. Air was really big, so I could get a ton of flights in and out of Boston. And I'd usually stay in my office in Pittsburgh, but from time to time, I'd fly back. And I'd always spend my summers in Hingham. But Peter was a good player, big, rangy defenseman. Great person, highly cerebral, big fan of him and his family. But that's what I loved. I got to be honest with you guys. I love that about being a college coach. There's so many, whether it's Daniel LaPerriere that went on to the NHL, or Jamie Baker, Marty and Eric Lacroix, whose father just got in the Hall of Fame, Greg Carville, one of the top coaches in U.S. college hockey. I had a chance to recruit all those guys. And there's so many others. I coached college for 6 years. and I still have great relationships with most of the players that I recruited and their families.
Yeah, see, Pierre lives and breathes hockey. He knows everybody in the game. That's why I love having him on. Pierre, always a pleasure, my friend. Safe travels. Enjoy Mont Tremblant, and maybe I'll see you around Boston sometime this summer.
I'm waiting for you to bring me to that adult establishment that you go to.
Yes,
You're friends with all the guys. I can't
all right,
wait.
we'll do that. Let's get it going. We'll talk.
All right,
off
thanks, Jimmy. Hey,
have
happy 4th of July, everybody. Have a great weekend and stay safe. Thanks,
and
Jimmy.
happy Canada Day as well. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pierre.
Yeah, I told you right away. He didn't even have to say the name.
Yep, I didn't even have to. That's awesome.
That's great. Yeah, Pierre's recruited a lot of people over the years, man, and he keeps in touch with them. I mean, he's just like
he's a whiz. He is truly a wizard of the game.
I don't understand why people like used to poke fun at him for that or didn't enjoy that. I want a guy like if I'm watching a hockey broadcast, I want the broadcasters to know what they're talking about. I want them to have these background stories. I want them to tell me the human side of the player and what this player went through to get to where he is now. I think that stuff's great. That's why I cover sports. You know, that's why I'm in this business.
I totally agree.
Never understood the people, even our, our fellow colleagues who knocked him for that. I mean, it's great. You know, he's Rain Man. He's he knows everything about the game. He knows all the people. But I tell you, his black book must be like the Bible.
His contact list in his phone takes up all his storage.
Yeah. So interesting stuff he says there, Blake, about Noah Hannafin.
Yeah.
I'm with him too. I don't think this is just going to be a give me draft picks, give me prospects. And that's why I think, looking at the team I cover, the Boston Bruins, they might have a shot if it's a hockey trade and it's NHLer for NHLer. I wonder, do you trade a Brandon Carlo?
Yeah, I would totally for that. Or even Grizzlick and a pick, something like that.
Well, the problem is they don't have any picks. And that's one thing I was very surprised. Not just the Bruins. I thought a lot of teams, because there's other teams that are in the same position with the Bruins that didn't have first-round picks, don't have them next year.
The Devils didn't have a first-round pick, but look what they're doing.
You didn't see them replenish. I thought they would have done some. Maybe they're still going to do that in the coming week. One thing we got to remember, right? And you and I were talking about it off air. What a great time everybody seemed to have in Nashville. All these GMs, these scouts, all these guys have been partying together for the last week in Nashville, right? They've been closing bars, closing hotel lobby bars, having dinners, talking with each other. You got to think that the legwork for a lot of trades was at least put in place, right? That there's some foundation for some deals that will be consummated in the next week were made there, right? Like that foundation was made there. Because that's what I've seen happen in the past where, we're like, wait, I thought there was going to be a lot of trades. And then what? And then all of a sudden it starts to pour in as free agency kicks in. So I think we're going to see some trades. I think it picks up because people can't go out and sign all the guys they want. And like Pierre said, it's a bad market right now.
And one thing that we've been talking about lately is where Tyler Bertuzzi is going to end up. Obviously, the stuff that came out recently, he's not going to be a Bruin. Where do you see him landing? I saw earlier that Pittsburgh was going to try to make a run at him.
Yep, Pittsburgh's interested. I know the Florida Panthers are very interested in him.
That'd be a good spot for him to land.
He brought up, we were talking about Joe Sakic. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Colorado Avalanche make a run at him. Another team that I think's got a ton of cap space that nobody's talking about, and I would watch out for them right now in free agency, in the trade market. They hired a coach that I know well, Greg Cronin, who's a tough dude. He's a bad mofo. And he's going to make that team change their identity and be very hard to play against. Bertuzzi would fit in exactly with what he's trying to do right there. They've got the cap space. I would keep an eye on the Anaheim Ducks as a team for Tyler Bertuzzi.
They sneaky have some very good young talent too.
They do.
Yeah.
Their defense, they've got some good defensemen. What did that kid Drysdale, right? You got Trevor Zegras, you got Troy Terry. You've got guys they've been drafting. Now they've got who's the other guy they just took there? No, not Carlson. Who's the guy? It was Carlson, right? Because he went number 2.
Think so. Yeah. I saw a couple Ducks fans wearing Adam Fantilli jerseys. That's a tough purchase.
Yeah. Wait a minute. I'm trying to get our next guest. James Nichols, who's joined us. I don't know if you checked out James, doing a great job at
Yeah. Oh yeah.
New Jersey Hockey Now. And man, what a summer they're having so far.
I know. We were talking about it before. Bringing on Toffoli, re-signing Timo Meyer. Like, those are two guys that if you keep them around with Jack Hughes, some of the other guys they got over there, they can be a dangerous team in the playoffs. What did you think before James joins us? Like, they made it to the second round for the first time in a while. What do you think was sort of their issue to not get kind of past that?
Goaltending. I thought they would have done it the year before, but I mean, they didn't have the goaltending. You know, let's be honest. They've had a lot of problems between the pipes, and that's why right now Tom Fitzgerald is still looking hard for a goalie. You know, I don't think it's a knock on the situation they have. I think he does like Vanacek. I think he likes the future. He likes Schmid. But I think they want, a guy that's in the
top caliber guy,
27 to 33-year-old range, that's proven, that shows it can be a number one. Now, we've heard them linked to Hellebuck. I think they are in on that as well. I just don't know if I pay the price for Hellebuck. I said this to you off the air, and I'll say it on here now. I think he's overrated. I really do. This guy has choked every time he's gone to the playoffs. He wasn't that great last year. I thought UC Saros should have been ahead of him and should have been a finalist instead of him for the Vezina. So I don't know. I'm kind of baffled at that. I wouldn't look at him. I think a great guy to get, and I think he's looking to bounce back, and his price might be a little lower than a Hellebuck or Saros, and looks like we got James Nichols now, so we'll continue this conversation, would be Gibson in Anaheim. We were just talking about Anaheim. So James Nichols joining us now from New Jersey Hockey Now. James, first of all, I haven't had a chance to speak to you since you joined the National Hockey Now Network, so welcome aboard. Congratulations, and I've really enjoyed your work thus far.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's been fun so far, and I think today is actually 1 month. So, yeah, it's been real good.
There you go. Now, were you in Nashville for the draft?
I was not, no, but I'm definitely planning on getting there next year. I have a 1-year-old at home, so just getting things sorted out there. Just trying
congratulations.
To get that. Thank you. So,
boy or girl?
She's a girl.
Okay, what's the name?
Layla.
That's a beautiful name. I like it.
Thank you.
Listen, I've got a 12-year-old. Well, she's going to be 12 on July 12th, and let me tell you, man, you're going to blink, and Layla's going to be 12 too.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
You're going to be sitting there. You're going to be sitting there introducing her to the movie The Mighty Ducks, and she's going to look at you and say, "Not for nothing, Dad, but Charlie Conroy's kind of cute." And you're like, oh boy, here it comes. Here it comes.
Yeah, I'm already shocked that we got to 1 already. It's been real fast, so I can totally understand how it goes.
start scouting all the friends you have that have sons her age, so you'll have the bodyguards when the boys start to like her. I've already got them lined up. I'm signing contracts. Free agency begins tomorrow, so. Anyhow, we were just talking about the goaltending with Jersey, so we'll jump in that, and then we'll kind of scatter around different topics for the Devils. But we keep hearing them linked to Hellebuck, and by all means, I mean, obviously he's a Vezina Trophy winner. He's a good goalie. Yeah. I do think though sometimes that people don't live in the moment enough when they're talking about Connor Hellebuck, and I was not that impressed with him this year. I think he was good. I would have had Saros ahead of him though. And I think that the price is just going to be too high. I think there's other goalies out there that Fitz can go and look at. And I mentioned Gibson maybe as a guy that you could buy low on right now because of the injury issues he's had, because of the last couple seasons, how hard they've been, but we still know the raw talent is there. What's your take on where Tom Fitzgerald goes with the New Jersey goaltending?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I agree with you about Hellebuck in the sense that he's going to cost too much, and he's on the wrong side of 30 right now, right? So, he obviously he was a Vezina candidate, and that went to Linus Ullmark. But again, he's going to be coming into a Devils team at a $6 million price tag. However, he's asking for upwards of $8.5 or maybe $9.5 million on a long-term contract for his next contract. So that doesn't really make too much sense to me for the Devils timeline, for their cap situation. They're going to have a lot of money even next summer, despite all of the contracts that they've signed this year, Timo Meier, Jesper Bratt, etc. They're still going to have like $24 million next offseason, and the only big contracts that they're going to have to deal with is Dawson Mercer. So they will have money to play with, but it just doesn't feel like the natural fit to me to bring in Hellebuck. Yes, he will maybe put them over the edge, and he's a better goaltender than Vitek Vanacek, but I think they're good enough to survive with somebody who they can get a little bit cheaper. I was thinking of maybe Logan Thompson, who's maybe going to need to find another destination just because of look how well Aiden Hill did for them, and they have a plethora of goaltending there. Although they do need to be healthy. We'll see where that goes. I know a lot of people have been clamoring for UC Saros, but I just don't know if with Yaroslav Askarov being mentioned as available at the draft, if they're getting ready to get rid of a guy like UC Saros. So I think that, maybe even someone like John Gibson, I know he has 4 years left on his contract, but I in my opinion, think that Vitek Vanacek is fine. I think that he might have been dealing with a little bit of an injury bug in the playoffs. Some people are wondering if it's a between the ears thing for him when they get to the postseason. But I mean, he had 33 wins last season. He's been consistent year after year. If he could just work on his game a little bit and just show up in the playoffs and have somebody who's strong in tandem with him, which I don't think it's going to be Akira Schmid next year. He has that waiver eligibility. I think someone like a Logan Thompson or someone a little bit cheaper on that end is a really good look. And if they can go to free agency and maybe get a Jonas Corposalo, that might work real well too.
And let's face it too, no matter how good your goalie is, you do need a defense in front of you. And not that they have a bad defense by any means, but that could be an area where Fitz is looking at. Oops, sorry guys. Forgot to turn that ringer off, rookie mistake. So that could be something. They've got some guys, I think I would imagine Ryan Graves isn't coming back. Am I correct?
Yeah, he's going to test free agency, and it is definitely something to be a little cautious about going into next season, because they're losing Ryan Graves, they're losing or they already lost Damon Severson, so you're going to have a couple of guys who are going to be stepping up in a Kevin Ball and in a Luke Hughes, who are have shown good promise, and there's reason to be optimistic about those players. However, growing pains are to be expected with those guys. So if you're not as strong in front of your goaltender as you were last season, because you're missing a Graves and a Severson, and you're getting maybe a couple of rookie mistakes or young NHL player mistakes out of guys like Ball and Luke Hughes, that can make or break, some positioning there. That can make or break home ice. It can make or break, where you end up in the standings. So there is reason to be optimistic about the young defense, but I do think that there is it would be wise of Fitzgerald to go to unrestricted free agency and see if he can bring in a veteran. They do have Brendan Smith, who's going to probably rotate in as their seventh defenseman, but I do think they probably need one more guy.
Well, one guy I can tell you, I just know because I've had conversations with Fitz about him that he likes. I don't know if he's going to pursue him in free agency, but that's Connor Clifton, who I've been covering for the last few years in Boston. He is going to market. I can tell you that right now. Connor Clifton will be on the market tomorrow as an unrestricted free agent. Maybe that's a good depth guy. He's a 5 or 6.
Yeah.
You can rotate him in with Smith. So there's guys out there. I mean, that's the thing. Like we were just talking to Pierre McGuire about how thin this free agent market is. However, it depends what you're looking for, right? If you're a guy like Fitz, who's kind of looking to plug some holes on the blue line there and add some depth guys, it's not that thin. I think there's a lot of good depth guys available. And This is when it comes down to your pro scouting and the job that they've done over the past year and what they came to a conclusion with as they approach free agency. Now we'll see what happens. So I think that's something the Devils could do for sure. I want to go up front though, man, because I'm looking at this Devils top 6 in the NHL. I mean, they're right up there with the best of them. In terms of a top 6 on forward position. What's been your take on how Fitz has built that forward group up?
Yeah, it's been incredible. I mean, every time he makes a move, I say to myself, wow, I can't get any better than this. And then suddenly he's trading for Tyler Toffoli. That was something I didn't see coming. It came out of left field because I was genuine in the sense that I thought, their top 6 was locked with Andre Palat in the mix. But now I think with Tyler Toffoli there, they can drop him down to the third line. So it's been incredible. I mean, look at the contract they just signed Timo Meyer to, 8.8 per season. I mean, he could have gotten somewhere on the open market upwards of $9.5 million. He was looking for Matthew Tkachuk money. And it's a funny situation because, I saw a lot of conversation about this online today, whether or not that 8.8 was worth it for Timo Meyer. And I'm afraid that a lot of people don't actually know how good Timo Meyer is. He was on a middling team in the San Jose Sharks, a team that, their power play wasn't as good. They weren't scoring at 5-on-5, yet he was going against the grain and scoring despite his team not doing well. So, now that he's with a team that's, jacked up with Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, to now Tyler Toffoli's in the mix, Jesper Bratt. I mean, I could see Timo Meyer scoring 45 goals, having 90 points. It's just sky's the limit for the Devils right now with this forward group. And now that Timo Meyer's here for 8 years, Tyler Toffoli's in the mix. I mean, it really, they're going to be one of the favorites in the East and in the NHL for a long time, in my opinion. You're muted, Jimmy.
Man, I keep doing that. I was typing away, so I didn't want people to hear me typing. I got to tell you, I also love how Fitz has handled the potential of an extension there, where he said that he actually went to Toffoli and said, "Hold up, I don't want you to jump the gun right now. I want you to come here, see what I love about the place here, see that it is a destination spot now, and really see if it's a good fit for you." So, how many GMs say that? That was great.
Right. And you saw how it worked for Timo, right? He came over from San Jose and he didn't know the area. He was either on the West Coast or in Switzerland his entire life. Right. Now he comes over to New Jersey and he sees, oh, there's a bit of a nice nightlife here. I can go right to New York. I can hop on the train. Or I have to go to Boston this weekend to play. I can hop on the plane in my backyard. It's 10 minutes away from the rink. I have to practice. I don't have to go anywhere. It's where my home ice is. So there was just so many factors that went into, outside of, how good the team was. There were so many factors that were attractive to a guy like Timo Meyer, who spent the majority of his NHL career, having all these factors be a little bit tougher on him that made him maybe not be able to perform maybe to his max potential on the ice. And, he still scored, 40 goals this season. So, the fact that he's doing that same approach with Tyler Toffoli does speak volumes to how much he believes in New Jersey. But I will say this, Tyler Toffoli also told me the other day that he is open to an extension there. He loves the trajectory of the Devils, and he does see himself playing there past 2023-24. And Tom Fitzgerald echoed the same sentiment.
Yeah, and I would think too, in Toffoli's case, man, he's kind of been living out of a suitcase for the last few years, even dating back. You think about what he went through with COVID when he was in Montreal, and he was away from his family at a time. Then they got there, and it's just, that's another thing we forget, right? And we talked about this off the air, and we just talked about it a bit with Pierre too. Is these guys are human beings, right? And like, they went through it too. We all went through what was a horrible time in our lives in COVID, and I think that we forget what it must have been like for some of those guys to be in that bubble. And even when it started to get, back to normal a bit, you were still kind of secluded and away from your family. I think that he's looking at it like, man, I could dig this. And this is, I want to settle down, because it's been 3 teams in the span of 2 years for him.
Yeah, it has. And the other thing too is, he's been on these teams that have been to this to the playoffs. He's helped teams capture Stanley Cups before, with the LA Kings in 2014. He's looking at this team right now. He was like, I was part of a young group in LA, and they, they had so much success. He's looking at this Devils team right now, and he's saying, this team's going to have that same success. I want to be a part of that. I want to lift another Stanley Cup. So he definitely wants to find a home, but he definitely also wants to do that with a team that's going to win. I mean, look, 31 years old, we talk about that being old in quote unquote hockey years. It's not old at all. Like, he still has a lot that he wants to accomplish. So I understand 31 being old in the sense of, okay, are we going to give this guy a longer term contract? But he still has things that he wants to accomplish with his career. So he wants that to be in New Jersey, and he's still hungry to win another Stanley Cup. And he knows that one of his best chances to do that are probably going to be with the Devils.
We talked about, so we've looked at the bottom 6 of the D. We looked at the goaltending. What is your take on the bottom 6 forward group? And do you think Fitz sprinkles some guys in there? Is he gonna try and bring some guys up from within the system?
So there's a couple of restricted free agents who need to be qualified by 5 o'clock today. He was, meaning Fitzgerald, was a little cryptic as to whether or not some of those guys might actually get qualified. I haven't been able to get a pulse on who he was alluding to, but those names include Kevin Ball, which I don't think he was alluding to him. Jesper Boquist, Michael McLeod, and Nathan Bastian. I think that all of those guys really are an important part of this team moving forward. And I think that they all really should be back unless he's got something else up his sleeve that I don't know about right now. Because Michael McLeod is one of the better fourth line centers in the league right now. He was an excellent penalty killer.
I like him a lot.
I loved his game this year. He's real fast. He kills penalties so well. He's an excellent defensive forward. He's really the backbone of the defense for the Devils. He's one of their best defensive forwards. Nathan Bastian brings a little bit of that muscle, a little bit of that grit that they don't really have outside of Timo Meier. Jesper Boquist is one of those guys who I could see, either stay or go, in the sense that they qualify him and they bring him back, or he's maybe part of something that, we're not thinking about larger, and they can send him out, a former second round pick with upside, has a little bit of offensive flair, and can also be a good in his own end. Outside of that, though, they have Curtis Lazar. He's going to be healthy. He had a couple of injuries that he talked about this year that didn't keep him in the mix too much. But, now that he's settled, and he also just had a child, so he said there was a lot to deal with that as well. Now that his outside life is a little bit more settled, you should see a different version of him coming to the Devils next season. So it's going to be a mix of, those guys. And then there's going to be some guys coming up from, I think, Utica, in Nolan Foote, who I think can be an everyday NHLer at this point. I was really impressed with him. He's got good foot speed. He's got good physicality, and he's got an underrated heavy shot. I think he can score 15 to 20 goals on the third line. Nice. So he'll be real good for them. That's in a couple of years. This year he's got to get, if he's going to be a full-time NHLer, he's got to get his feet wet. But he has that potential. And then they just signed Eric Haula too, who's going to be, I think, their third line center. He might move back and forth between the third line and play next to Jack Hughes, because they found some decent chemistry together as well. But, there's a lot of options. Like, they're just a really deep team. So we'll see where this goes. Another name down in Utica I didn't mention earlier was Graham Clark. He had a really good year in the AHL last year. I think he had like over 70 points. So that they have just a really deep roster right now. And, hopefully, you knock on wood for no injuries. But if there are, they're not too worried about it at this point.
Finally, I want to talk to you. Look, I don't know. Are you from the Jersey area, James?
Yes, I actually live currently in Staten Island, New York, but I'm only 20 minutes away from Newark. And hopefully we're trying to move into New Jersey quite soon.
But you grew up in the area. Where'd you grow up?
It's Staten Island.
Oh, okay, cool. But I mean, you're familiar with the Devils growing up and all that.
Yeah.
So talk to us. Just, it seems that the fan base is just completely revitalized. I know it's kind of gone on a downswing there. What's the vibe like around Devils fans right now?
Yeah, it's incredible. Even though I've been in Staten Island, and this is Ranger Town. But even though I've been in Staten Island, the majority of my games that I used to go and watch were at the Prudential Center, or in the Meadowlands, but just because of how close I am to it. And there were times where, you'd go and, let's say Colorado would roll in. You want to see Nathan McKinnon play against the Devils. And all of a sudden you get there and you're like, wait, why were my tickets so cheap? Why were they $25? And you're like, oh, that's why, because no one's here. They're trying to get people in the door, right? They were in a bit of a rut for a little while. The Corey Schneider era, I like to call it, was one of their lower points. But listen, they had to go through the growing pains to get to the glory days like they're living in right now, to be able to draft Jack Hughes, to be able to draft Nico Hischier, and now it's a party. Every time you go to the Prudential Center, it is buzzing. Like, there are people outside the Prudential Center, tailgating. They have this little fan area set up where there's live bands playing all the time. There's a couple of bars, next to each other that everybody's, hanging outside of, and music playing all the time. So before and after, it's a party. And while you're there, I mean, you heard them, there's plenty of clips going around from how the fan base was this season. They're rowdy when they're in there. So they're there now. They're supporting their team now. I think they're all revitalized. I think they're all excited, and there's a lot of reason to be, just because of so much young talent on this team. They're going to be this good for a long, long time.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed watching that Rangers-Devils series, not that there weren't a lot of Rangers fans there, and that's understandable because of the proximity, but it wasn't dominated by the Rangers fans. And, for a while, like you said, the Prudential Center was kind of like whatever the hell they call the place in Florida now. What is it? FAL Live, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you go to that arena, and the only time it's packed is when, a Toronto or a Montreal or a Boston or a New York come to town, because you got all the snowbirds that have moved down to Florida. And, and then obviously it's a tourist destination. People want to come down. And I always felt like whenever I'd watch a Rangers-Devils game for the longest time, it was just way louder when the Rangers scored. When I was watching that series, that was more Devils, man. That was way more, the Devils noise was way more prominent than it's been in a while. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, there was one game this year. I think it was early on in the season too, probably one of the first, where Devils fans might not have known, like, okay, this is going to be the season where we just skyrocket. Yeah, there were a lot of blue jerseys in the stands, and I turned over to one of the other writers, and I was like, whoa, this is a home game for the Rangers, huh? And first goal, sure enough, goes to the Rangers, and you just heard the roar. Not after that though. After that, I think the next time they met, it was mostly red and white. And Devils fans, I think they kind of took a little bit of an offense to how many Ranger fans were there, because the next time out, it was not like that, and they made sure every game since it was all Devils. So even when they were at MSG in the playoffs, you saw a lot of red and white in the crowd. So
I look back. What was the game? Was it that? And it might be that second game you're referring to at the Prudential against the Range. Was that the one when Severson scored the OT winner? That
was the one. Yeah. And they were wearing their reverse retros. Awesome. That was electric. Yeah, absolutely. So, it was funny too. Like, that was the game where, it was mostly Devils fans in the crowd again. And you heard the deliberate, intentional loudness by the Devils fans with the few Ranger fans then sprinkled in the crowd. So it's just a whole different vibe than it was for the last couple of seasons, and it's really something to marvel at. It's been fun.
Now here's the other question: what did the police blotter look like after those games?
there are grates up everywhere. There's a ton of police out there all the time. It's hilarious. I have to say, I feel secure when I leave the arena at night and I'm walking to my car.
Yeah, I remember I've been to a couple Montreal games in Boston where I just looked down and just full out brawls in the stands. Like, this is why I love hockey.
It definitely gets a little crazy out there.
So I got one question for you, James. You talked a little bit here in a few times about growing pains. Obviously, Jack Hughes had a few growing pains early on in his career. He scored 43 goals this season. Do you think we see 50 goals from him this year?
Listen, it's hard to put numbers, like on paper and say this is going to happen, but he has the potential. Like the way he just carries the puck through zones seamlessly, just so silky smooth, finds ways to get around defenders. If he's not going to beat you with his speed, he's going to somehow beat you with his finesse and get around you anyway. Jack Hughes, look, I didn't know when he got drafted. I said to myself, that guy, he's first overall. He's scrawny. He's small. He's completely changed the game. He's completely changed the dynamic. And I couldn't have been more wrong about him. He's one of the best players I've ever seen live. I just, again, when he was, when the Oilers came to town and it was Connor McDavid and Jack Hughes on the ice together, it was just back forth. Like it was incredible to watch. So I think a 50-goal season is in Jack Hughes' future. I don't know if it's next season, but I think it is there. It could be next season. I'm not saying it's not. I just don't know. 100 points, definitely. He had 99 this year. I think very soon we're going to be talking about someone who's going to be in possession of the Hart Trophy.
For sure. It's great to see. Good stuff to see. Well, listen, James, keep up the good work. And we'll both be busy men tomorrow and for the next few days. But I hope you have you have a 1-year-old, so he's not going to have much of a break. But I hope you can get some downtime in the near future.
Yeah, I hope so. Good luck tomorrow. And hey, let's hope that the Bruins, right? No, we don't know what's happening with Bergeron and Krejci, so let's hope they can maybe benefit from some of these buyouts, like a Matt Duchene. Seems like a good fit, right?
That's what I was thinking, man. There's some good center options out there, and you could get it. I won't say bargain bin basement type deals, but cheaper than you might have expected. So
yeah,
we'll see what happens. Well, listen, my friend, and where can we find you on Twitter there?
Yeah, at James Nichols NHL. It's right down here in my little name area.
That's it.
And you can find New Jersey Hockey Now at NJD Hockey Now.
Awesome stuff. Have a good one, my man.
All right, boys. Have a good one.
Thank you, James.
James Nichols join us here on the National Hockey Now podcast. He's Blake Thorne. I'm Jimmy Murphy. Thanks for joining us again. And we'll have this up on all the different platforms soon. And we'll get something together. We probably won't be on tomorrow, but I think Blake and I were talking either Sunday or Monday. We'll kind of do a reactionary podcast to the first couple of days of free agency. And then, of course, we will go on. I'm hoping, Blake, that we at least have at least twice a month we're on, maybe a little more during the summer. I think we could keep it going. There's always something to talk about. People, people always say, "Oh, it's a summer. You must be psyched to get a long vacation." Like, nah, dude. My vacation, I get maybe a week or two. The hockey season never really ends. It's just the way it is.
You gotta write every week. You gotta find something to write about.
I love it. It's just there is no break. So, but it's good. But I am, unless, and I said this on a radio show I was on earlier, unless the Bruins on the 10-year anniversary of the Tyler Seguin trade on Tuesday decide to make another monumental trade while I'm enjoying my fourth. I am shutting her down from Monday to Wednesday, and then I'll be back at it with Bruins development camp. So thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to you, Blake. Thanks to Pierre McGuire. Thanks to James Nichols. We'll talk to you in the next episode.
Thanks for watching.